point off. Is that what you said?
No, they.
Oh, okay. Where did we get to? Did we get to the bear?
Yeah.
We got to the bear? What is an empire for profit? Yeah, that's imperialism. They have all these imperial wars. And what group wanted, oh, what is that idea? Either devotion to country or we want our own country. What is it called? What is it called? You raise your hand and then, huh? Yeah, nationalism. I just didn't hear you. So nationalism, what is the large ethnic group that all this area, even though like yeah, the Slavs. So who want to create a greater Slavia or a greater, not Slavia, greater of their own country here? Serbia. And therefore put them in direct contact or conflict with what? Declining empire? Yes. Yes.
I remember learning that Putin was of some, like, is he Slavic or something?
Yeah.
He is. And he's one of the last, right? I remember as a freshman learning that this is something about this being a special.
I don't know. I can't think of it. He's a Russian. He's a Slavic. He was a member of the KGB. When Ronald Reagan went to visited Russia in 86, President Reagan, it was a big deal when they made a state visit. And they had all these tourists out here to go interact, Russian civilians to interact with American media to tell them how great the Soviet Union was. Putin was one of them. And so there's I think it's on NBC TV, an old film of him, a very young Putin, actually Russian citizen said, I love the Soviet Union. So maybe that's a special part. And now we're just an autocratic, isolated. I don't know. We're going to get to that. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about this because something's going to come up with that again. And about Russia and about what's going on right now and compared to about why it's important to know these things that happen. What bear was this from? That's actually from Idaho. How do you know? Potato wheel. You can tell. But let's see. Oh, what was the name for German superior civilization? What they call it? Yes. Culture. That German culture. And what's the fake race they made up? Aryan. That blonde-haired, blue-eyed. And the thing about it is, since it's made up, they can just make up what that actually means. Because even though Hitler had blue eyes, he had brown hair, but yeah, his cheeks were the right length apart, that kind of thing. So it's all purely made up. And of course, it all is a construct. We just all kind of make it up. Doesn't mean it doesn't have impact. And what was the alliance of Germany and Austria and Italy? Well, they would become the Central Power. What was the alliance before the war? Triple Alliance. And which country was the most unreliable member of that alliance? What country? Italy, yeah. And what country, so was the Triple Entente was what, 3 countries? Don't trust me. Well, you can trust me sometime. Pick and choose when to trust me. Yes.
France, Russia,
and Wyoming, yes. France, Russia, and Britain. Which country, though, was only an understanding? And Britain said they would defend what country? Belgium. Who would defend Serbia? Kind of. I mean, this was all like, we're going to do it. The problem is, sure, countries can say lots of things. Then it depends on their prestige, their honor. All right, on that note, any questions on the map? Make sure your name is on it. Very carefully rip it out. Carefully. I'm watching. Ooh, rapid. I'm normally not that excited about that crayon.
Yeah.
Really? Make sure your name is on them and turn them up. Kiev. When I was a kid, I was always Kiev because we learned all the Russian spelling. All the fighting around Kharkiv, and to me as a kid, that was Kharkov. That's massive fighting in World War II. Let's see. All right, beautiful. Campbell crayon?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah. It's like the twistable crayon.
Oh.
It's really good. Crayon, I just, I'm sure we are.
That's, I'm thinking about it. Jordan, crayon? Crayon?
No. Sorry. Wasted opportunity. I should have used my twistables, man.
Yes, crayons?
Oh, the mask.
I get so excited. Do I have to remind you of one of the many things that makes me so cool? No, you know what makes me cool about this? It's the sharpener.
They totally work.
All right, so we got the arms rates, we got that. Artillery. Do we get the dreadnoughts? The big battleships. And the thing about the dreadnoughts, these truly were the superpower, the super weapon of the era. This was like the most technologically advanced weapon you can imagine. You know, by the time we get to 1915, you know, the Barnum right here, and this was 38,000 tons. It'd be damaged in Alexander Harbor by Italian frogmen in 1942. Remember what a frogman is? That's what they call people with scuba gear. They said, you look like a frog. So they called them frogmen. That was going to be the next war. And France spent every penny they had on their land forces because their population was only 2/3 of that of Germany. Russia, just beginning industrialization. They were industrializing, but very uneven. And they lost almost their entire fleet to Japan. Austria built a couple. Like one would be sunk literally 2 days before the war ended. 2,000 sailors. They just sailed it out, literally, like looking back, like for no reason, and it was sent by a submarine. Italy built a few. Japan built a lot. Here's a U.S. dreadnought. This is the Uss Maine. And you'll notice these big towers on top. They realized we better have somebody high so we can aim the guns, because they're going to shoot anywhere from 15 to 20,000 yards. So we better know where they're going to hit. And so they had to get higher and higher and higher. But who else made dreadnoughts? Only the most technologically advanced and wealthiest countries could build them. Germany. Here are German dreadnoughts. By the way, they're coal-powered. This is the Lützen. And Britain, who was always kind of neutral, they could stay aloof. Britain only had one real ally. They said to defend Belgium, and their ally was Japan because of fear of Russia. But now, all of a sudden, Germany, with the strongest army in the world, was starting to build a fleet. They started building dreadnoughts very fast, and really good ones. Because they only had to really be here. Britain had to go all over the world. And that pushed Britain to become allied with whom? Their old enemy, France. They didn't like each other, but both feared Germany. And once that happened, Britain and France became closer. France then begged Britain to come to an agreement with Russia. And now Germany is truly surrounded. Now, there's no real agreement. There's not like Britain has to go to war. But this would change everything. I should add, these are coal-powered. You can tell by the smoke. Britain had a lot of coal. Germany had a lot of coal. Oil turbines were much cleaner, and you could call more oil. Cleaner is relative. But neither of them had oil. Britain's going to go right before World War I, do everything they can to get oil. Gee, I wonder what part of the world are they going to go try to find oil? This is me thinking, pondering. Yes, they're going to create the country called Kuwait. After World War I, they'll create Iraq. They're going to make a very unequal treaty with a country called Persia, but today we call it Iran. I'm sure nothing will come out of this. Nothing to see here. Move on. All of these events that are going to come down the road, you can see in their genesis in the events leading up to or after World War I. It's actually really kind of weird and scary. So these weapons were so expensive, so costly, and so valuable to national prestige. I mean, they would literally count it. When Britain had 34 dreadnoughts when the war began, and Germany had 17. And they talked about it all the time. This was like, we have to have this many ships. These symbolize the arms race, symbolize the pushing of the alliance, the events that led to war, and they were so valuable, they were afraid to use it. They were afraid to actually send them out because then they might actually be sunk. And so there's only going to be one major battle of dreadnoughts, a huge, epic battle between Britain and Germany right here at the Battle of Jutland in 1916. And it was basically a draw. And that should give you the idea about a little bit about the folly of some of this kind of arms race. Are you really going to spend that much treasure and then never use it? You know, we spent $2 billion apiece for a plane called the B-2 stealth bomber. We can't really use the thing. Could you imagine losing one? We have the same problem with our most modern fighter called the F-35, which is kind of a disaster. They're $400 to $500 million a piece, and it costs almost $1 million a day to operate. Think we'd ever want to lose one? If you want to know why defense spending is so high, I just told you. You spend on weapons like that. And this is a prestige issue. It's a big prestige issue. Are you really going to use it? So when the war came about, these sat in harbor, and what mattered? Artillery and men. Blood. And so, what do you call the troops? We had the draft. And yeah, everyone's in for a year. Everyone did it but Britain. The United States did not have the draft either, of course. That will be a big issue I'll talk about next week. They're in for a year, and then where do they go after that? What are they in? Reserves. And that's where we get to the term called mobilization. Mobilization, where you have your standing army. And so Germany had a standing army, armed forces of a little bit less than 1 million men. France had like maybe 600,000. But the mobilization was this. That is when you have your standing army. So those are men in uniform. And then you call out the reserves. That is why this map of August 4th, 1914, so a couple days after Germany attacked Belgium, this is the day that Britain declared war on Germany, so you get the World War. Germany had less than 1 million men overall, but look how many men they had in their army. A little bit over 4.5 million men. France, with a population a third smaller, they were able to put over 4 million men in uniform. That's their regular army, and then literally the country they're going to take out every young man just about from age 20 to 40 are pulled out into the army. All of them. Russia could have had more, but they didn't have, they had 5.971 million, or, we don't know, 5.971 million. They didn't have 6 million rifles. So that was a problem the Russian army is going to have pretty much the whole war, those poor Russian soldiers. But you see, Austria, even with their hodgepodge of people, a lot of people they didn't trust, they still got 3 million men. This is way exaggerated, by the way. That's counting basically everybody who actually walked and all the Boy Scouts. And so, here's the deal. Mobilization meant, boom, you hit the trigger, you call it the reserves. They sent word out to every town. They said report to your mustering stations, they call it. They go on the train and they go to the frontier. Does that make sense to everybody? So first off, if they call mobilization, if one country calls mobilization, let's say Russia, what do their potential enemies have to do? They have mobilized too. And now it's a race, isn't it? And who has the advantage in the race? Once one country mobilizes, the other one, it's a race. But who's the advantage? The first one, because what can they do? What can they do? They can attack. You mobilize first, you can attack while your enemy's not getting ready. And so what do? They practice mobilization. They went over and over again. The smartest young men in Germany, when they were in their secondary school, high school, they would be recruited into the army, not just draftees, to recruit into their military academy, especially the good ones in math. Why? To learn train tables. So they could figure out the entire rail network of Germany, so the army could take it over and get every man to the front before France or Russia does. So they geared the entire country for that. So a couple things are going to come out of that. First off, if you attack first, you mobilize and attack first. That's the plan. Let's say you mobilize and don't attack. What's your enemy going to do? Won't they attack? So you mobilize. What do you have to do? And here's the thing. Mobilization means war. And politicians did not understand this. And that includes politicians all the way to the Kaiser of Germany and Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. They didn't understand that. They didn't understand what it meant. They were told this. We have to mobilize and attack or we'll be vulnerable and our enemies will. They could hear it. They could not, and then not get it at all. They still saw this as some kind of like pieces on a chessboard. We can mobilize and that will tell our enemy we mean business and then they'll back down. No. If they do it, it means war. And they didn't understand that. And I'm saying that right now because you have people right now that are talking right now, and some of them are elected officials in the United States government, members of Congress. And they're saying the United States, and what is the military alliance the United States has in Europe? NATO. Created in 1949. And we'll get to that down the road, obviously. This massive military alliance. And they said, the US should do a no-fly zone, use American, the British and French have really good fighter planes too, use those to make a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And that total war, but that means shooting down Russian planes. I said, that's a great idea as a move to help Ukraine, and not even at all thinking of the implications of that. That means war with Russia. Russia, which is relatively weak, yet they have 5,000 nuclear weapons and they're not doing that. And a leader that appears to be unstable, who's threatened nuclear war on Sunday. And so people think we just move pieces around like it's a video game. And that's what they're going to think here. No. If we actually started shooting down Russian planes, and you have a leader that's worried they might be removed from office violently, that could mean World War III. And yes, we are the closest we've been to nuclear war in your life. I've been close many times. Yeah. Let me tell you about 1979. 83 is actually the scariest one. But it's, oh, we should do that. Oh. I mean, maybe that's Beth Paul's, maybe not, but the implications. It's not a game. And they still thought it was a gamer. We could just mobilize and we'll tell them we mean business. Are you sure? Now, Russia could destroy the world 40 to 50 times. And this is just math. I want to be clear about it. You only really have to do it once. All right, does that make sense? And once you do that, it gets out of control really fast. This is what's going to happen here. But there's one more thing too. Just imagine you pull out of Germany 3 million men between the age 20 and 40. They didn't pull all out. They left a lot of the 30-year-olds because they thought they were too old. But you pull all those people out of the economy. What's going to happen to the factories? What's going to happen to the farms? Also, you take the entire rail network that was shipping goods all over Germany and say, no, now you're going to be shipping troops into the front. Who takes over the country once you mobilize? The military takes over. And by the way, the Kaiser never understood that. He gave up full power to the generals as soon as they mobilized. He never understood that. He okayed it. He agreed to it. He said that was fine. They never understood what they agreed to. Did I write that down? Did I plan on it? Nope. Write that down. I meant to write that down. The military takes over. I really thought about it. Actions do have implications. And the military will take over. And that means they're going to take over the entire economy. So mobilization is more than just calling out the troops. Even though when you would have said that in 1914, and down the road they still say mobilization, or we just call it a reserve. No, that literally means taking over the country. Command control of the country. Different degrees in different countries, but wait till the United States enters this war. The United States government will take over the economy. in 1917. And so with that, Germany, oh, I jumped the gun. So here's Germany. If you look at the numbers, 4.5 million. If they mobilize, even if they mobilize first, which they're going to, they're the most technologically advanced country in Europe and the best trained army. But there's still over 4 million French soldiers and nearly 6 million Russian. They really can't count on Austria all that much. I think you can imagine what will happen in a long war. If they split their forces to stop both, they'll be crushed slowly. What is that term where you kill so many of the enemy they have to eventually give up? Attrition. So what does Germany do? Well, first off, the logical choice is, are you really sure you want to go to war? What they look at it is, it's going to happen. Our enemies are out to get us. Remember culture? We got to attack before they get us. And Russia is growing their industry. Every day they're getting stronger. But they're still relatively backwards. So Germany made the decision, if we mobilize, let's attack our biggest threat first, knock them out, turn and attack the other side, which is their biggest threat. First, France, very advanced, powerful army, great rail network. France will mobilize first. France wants to attack here. Remember the lost provinces? They know it. So what is their plan? Mobilize the plan. Mobilize, attack France first. Then they figure it'll take about 6 weeks. 6 weeks for Russia to mobilize. Knock them out, get on trains, and have their exhausted troops go defeat Russia. That's their plan. But there's another problem. If the entire powerful, very good French army attacks here, they'll get bogged down. Here comes the Russians. So where do they attack? They can't go this way because of what? Well, no. The Alps. That's what they care about. Switzerland's neutral. Belgium's neutral. So they'll go through Belgium. Belgium's relatively flat. Swampy, but flat. Relative. This is mountains here, but right here. So the plan, sweep through Belgium. And this will be called, named after the chief of the great German general staff, Erich von Schlieffen, or the Schlieffen Plan. Put almost their entire army, as many men as they could get, it would turn out to be almost 2.5 million men, and sweep through Belgium. So going around the main French attack. The main French attack will be here, with the very clever name. The French attack is Plan 17. You don't need to know that. It just always makes me laugh, Plan 17, especially when the perhaps worst the worst movie ever made from 1959 is called Plan 9 from Outer Space. Has anyone seen it? Oh, you've totally missed out. It's so awful, it's wonderful. We're going to watch it in special conference room for the Vigilante Parade. That's going to be our a mini unit on really bad movies. Sweep around here. Let the French attack. It's mountains here, it's really rugged, and then defeat them in a big battle here. Then jump on trains and go beat the Russians. So that became the German plan. Three things. First off, this is a really desperate plan. All or nothing attack through Belgium. What if it fails? It suck. This is a plan of a country that literally is like on their last legs, not the most powerful country in Europe. Part of the problem when you create a philosophy where you believe you are superior than everybody else, your culture, and everybody's out to get you, you begin to believe somehow you're weak, and you have to turn to desperate plans. Well, no, Germany's really strong, but they act like they're the weakest. You'll see this in like the 1950s in the Cold War in the United States. The Soviets are taking over everything and we're all going to die. The US was really strong. The Soviet Union was almost destroyed in World War II. But we didn't see it that way. This happens a lot in countries, happen here, it happened elsewhere. So that. What's the other problem? Well, von Schlieffen realized after he made the plan, it will never work. That's a bad point for a plan. There's not enough roads through Belgium. They can't get the millions of men through here and supplied and then turn around and go this way. It won't work. What's going to happen? A massive traffic jam. It will not work. I mean, maybe, but not enough to risk it. They got no other plan. So when the war began, they kind of like, choose the plan. There they go. That's literally what happened. They kind of pulled it out of a little file cabinet. And what's big problem number 3? The one who might enter the war. So this is a desperate, almost loony, almost a plan a lunatic would make, and that's the plan they have. Yeah, von Schlieffen's like, won't work. But when he died in 1909, it was passed on to other generals, and it's just kind of like, well, this is our plan. Got nothing else. So mobilization means attack France. Everyone got that? So the Balkans are going to be this crisis that will brew up time after time. There's going to be near wars in the 1870s, 1890s, 1908, and 2 actually really big Balkan wars in 1912 and 1913. Fought here. There's a hodgepodge of different groups. These new volatile kingdoms are being created here in the last 100 years of Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Albania, Montenegro, Greece. A weakened, but still there, Ottoman Empire. But remember Serbia. Serbia was intriguing in Austria. They were trying to foment a revolution here. They were trying to foment it. And all of a sudden in 1914, and don't forget, there were assassinations by anarchists, all kinds of stuff going on all over the world. And then it's amazing how this assassination would blow the world up. I guess it hit that critical mass. Maybe it was why or who did it. It wasn't anarchists. This was a country that did it. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. His uncle, Franz Joseph, took the throne in 1848 when he was 18. And he was very, Franz Joseph, get my years right. Yeah, Franz Joseph was 84. And so he's nearing the end. He was a reformer. He was going to Bosnia, right here. Austria just annexed it, right next to the Serbian border, to a little town called Serbia. Did I say Serbia? Sarajevo. They're going to have military operations. He was going to go into Sarajevo, review the troops. And when the Serbians heard about this, they took an organization called the Black Hand. Now, these are Slavic nationalists who, on the surface, was a secret terrorist group against the Austrians. And they try to act like we are just Bosnians who want independence. But they were completely owned and created by the Serbian secret police. And they recruited assassins to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand. One of them was Gabriel Princip. Princip was a young man, 18 years old, desperately wanted to fight against the Austrians. He was at first he was too young, but he also had tuberculosis. And so he could not join the Serbian army, but he wanted to fight. The Serbian secret police actually recruited men with tuberculosis for this assassination. Why? They all have a death sentence anyways. So they would commit suicide before they could tell that they were actually being run by the Serbian secret police. They had little glass vials of cyanide. And the plan was if they were attacked, they would fight it and kill themselves. And the figure was they're dead already. That's what they did. And so everyone kind of knew Serbia was behind it, but they wouldn't testify. So Serbia could act like, hey, this is your own terrorist issue. And so 7 assassins, including Princip, would be waiting in Sarajevo. Here is a map of Sarajevo. The numbers are where the assassins were. They were going to go near the river Miljax. It was only like this deep. Through town, little motorcade through town, not very heavily guarded. And go to the mayor's residence. They come back through town, turn, go down Franz Joseph Street. And that was the plan. Through Sarajevo, quick in and out of the town. The assassins were waiting. When the motorcade, this is the motorcade, there's Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. The first assassin went past him, he didn't They're going slow, but he lost his nerve. Understandable. The second assassin threw a little bomb, basically a grenade, and it was one of those you had a little fuse where you pulled the pin and kind of lit a little fuse on fire, so it smoked. The driver saw it, hit the gas, drove out of the way of the bomb, hit the back of the car, rolled under the next car, wounded 2 officers. Well, after that happened, pandemonium. They sped through town, past the other assassins, who immediately just started running. Almost all of them were captured. Some of them were captured trying to cross the river. Most of them tried to commit suicide, but the cyanide was so degraded, it just made them really sick. And they were all caught with papers from the Serbian secret police. That's how slipshod this operation was. Serbia was behind it. But Princip didn't run away. He crossed the street and went to a deli and got a sandwich. True story, got a sandwich. He was trying to act natural. Oh, someone tried to kill the Archduke? Let's get a sandwich. So he's in there at the deli and he's kind of hiding in there. Ferdinand went to the mayor's residence, yelled at the mayor, got back in his car, drove back through town, and originally they were going to get him out of town a different way, but he wanted to go to the hospital to see the 2 officers who worked at the hospitals down here. So they said, okay, we're just going to drive straight through. Nobody told the first car in the motorcade, and that first car turned. Ferdinand's car thought, oh, I must have missed something, and followed. When they realized it, slammed on the brake, literally just in front of that deli. Princip was finally got the nerve to come on after about an hour, and literally 5 feet away, there's Archduke transferred. So there he was. He opened fire with a revolver, killing both Ferdinand and his wife. Here's a picture of a very precise reenactment of it. Can you guess which car is Ferdinand's? And then, bang. That one, okay, the mustache always makes me laugh in a very dark way, but I can't help it. There's a little marker there. This would become a big moment of Serbian or Slavic nationalism. There's a painting of it. There's Princip after he was arrested. And the plan was to do a big trial, show trial after the war was over. Everybody believed it was Serbia, all around the world, including Russia. Russia was furious at Serbia. How dare you try to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand? I mean, how dare you? This makes us all look bad. And there was actually this worldwide condemnation of Serbia. And if Austria would have done something, I'm not saying this is the right move, but let's say like a little attack, or Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, is just across the border, literally across the Danube. If they would have done something like horrible, well, let's say artillery and shell Belgrade, it might not lead to war. Everybody would have been like, Serbia deserves it. Whatever, because this wasn't the regular people of Serbia didn't do it. But it might not lead to World War I. But Serbia was a real threat to Austria. And Austria thought, let's get them. Let's take them out completely. So the first thing that happened was all over Austria, Slavic nationalists, anybody they could tie, or just they're Slavic, were rounded up, and over 1,000 people would be brutally executed. They had this kind of hanging machine that had kind of this ratchet they would spin, and it would crank them up to just above their toes, and they would strangle them to death. This horrible reprisal where they hung hundreds like this. By the way, was that what the Serbian police wanted? Secret police wanted? Yes. They wanted reprisals. So the people, the Slavs of Austria, would rise up and rebel. This is horrible, I know, but that's what they wanted. They wanted the crackdown. But then things died down. It died down. And people thought, we dodged a bullet. It's awful, it's horrible, Serbia is a terrible country, and that's including their allies later on. But then we have something called the July crisis. The July crisis is this. So we have June now into July. And it's really the last week of July, where everybody is calm, like they thought, around the world, but not in Vienna. In Vienna, the capital of Austria, they're like, okay, now it's our chance. I put down punish, but punish meant knock them out. They wanted to destroy the Serbian army, destroy their secret police, and put in a puppet government. They wanted to take Serbia out. But they knew if this goes from just a punishment to all-out war, whom might be mad? Who will be mad if they go to a full war against Serbia, especially a month afterwards? Yeah, Russia. So who does Austria need to make sure is on their side? They go to Berlin. They actually see the Kaiser before he goes yachting. And Germany, the Kaiser and his Chancellor, Bethlehem, Cookham, Pullman, basically just said, do what you want. This in history is going to be known as a blank check. Do what you want, we'll back you up. Germany just assumed a sharp little war to punish Serbia will strengthen their only ally. In fact, the Kaiser was so confident, he went yachting the fjords of Norway. He took a summer yachting trip and was gone for 3 weeks. So this whole time when the world's rolling to war, the Kaiser of Germany, the country most responsible for this as it would turn out besides Austria, he didn't think anything of it. Everything's fine. Not realizing the implication of the blank check. But the head of the great German general staff, who replaced Schlieffen right there, Paul von Moltke, whose uncle was a war hero, von Moltke told Austria, go. He wants war now. He's telling Austria, don't worry about Russia. We'll knock Russia out. You take Serbia out. Von Moltke wants the war now. Von Moltke is thinking, every day we wait, Russia gets stronger. And they're coming for us. Do you remember in 1860 when Lincoln was elected and I told you what the South was thinking? A preventative war because someday the North might take our slaves away. They might destroy our economy, create a Republican Party. We get stronger, or they get stronger every day. We better attack now. That's what Germany is. That's what von Moltke. So he pushed them. All this is in secret. And then all of a sudden, the last week of July, Austria sends a 10-point ultimatum to Serbia. They do it on a Friday afternoon. So you have 48 hours. And the ultimatum was specifically designed. There's no way Serbia could accept it. It's basically giving up their country. This is almost exactly what Russia presented to Ukraine yesterday. You basically have to give up your country. And they refused. And so, yeah, that's where we're at there. Everybody told, including Russia, said accept it. Serbia agreed with caveats to 9 of them. 9 of the 10. And this was another one where everybody's like, oh, we're okay. All the telegraphs are going crazy. It looks like we're okay. There won't be Armageddon. And that's the word they use. Here's the brutal tenure of Austro-Hungarian note to Serbia makes acceptance impossible. They actually did, but they added caveats. But to the Austrians, no, you didn't accept it 100%. You didn't accept all 10. So what did they do? They declared war. And when Austria declared war, this is not a punitive punishment attack. This is the destruction of Serbia. So who said you can't do that? We're not going to allow you. So Russia, to threaten Austria, mobilizes. Mobilization means what? The Kaiser ordered this, so Russia began to mobilize. And so who could go to the Kaiser? Who? He heard about the ultimatum and came back. He was up here in Bergen, right up here. Came back as quickly as he could. And they said, von Moltke went to him and said, Russia's mobilizing. They're coming. They're coming. What do we have to do? What does Germany have to do now? And if they mobilize, that means they're attacking whom? And like that, Europe is aflame. That's how fast it happened. And so I like you touch me, you make one move on. There's Russia, Germany, France, and then Britain, who can't allow Germany, to their point of view, become the most dominant country instead of this kind of weird equilibrium. That's a pretty clever little cartoon. Do you want to see an easy to follow little map about this? Okay, this one just made me laugh, so I thought I'd show you. And so, war. Who is it? The same paper that said a wild boar attacked President McKinley. The amazing thing is, that's pretty close to the truth, isn't it? The map's actually pretty close. Look at the real headline from London. Pretty close, isn't it? But my favorite part about this is Ottoman Empire almost declares war on itself. Nations struggle to remember allies. But you want to see the best part? Assassination of Archduke spreads fear at Archduke convention. Okay, with that, and so here's one of those things. Here's, this is when the war began. So this is a British one. So here comes the Russian steamroller. And the poor little dachshund getting nipped in the nose by the English bulldog. Here's a French poodle standing up and fight. An Alsatian, no way they can beat us. That one kind of makes me laugh. I'm not sure. But now Serbia is their ally, so they got to be nice to Serbia. So they have it as a wasp stinging the Austrians. I don't know what Turkey's doing. Okay, so with that, August 4th is the real day the war began. And on that note, so tomorrow, a few things about the war. This event of the war, it's amazing how this would happen time after time. There's a really good book about this written back in '61 called The Guns of August. President John Kennedy loved that book. He gave it to all his cabinet members, ironically, 1 month before the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thank you. We'll see you. Goodbye. Have a good day. If anyone's going to be gone Thursday or Friday, you have to see me because I do have a couple little assignments. And, the DBQ. We're having a DBQ next week. It is your responsibility to go back and review that. You're going to be gone. Yeah,
but if we're not playing, I know I'll be gone Thursday, but if we're not playing, we're just
Yeah, come in if you got to leave halfway. We'll figure it out. Okay. And I'll give it to you tomorrow what we need for. Actually, you already have it. I'll just tell you.
All right,
I'll see you later.
See you. 6.
Yep.
Oh, I will be gone on Friday.
Why?
Mr. Patrick's taking me home.
Why'd you take me out skiing?
I don't know.
All right.
Yelling in for that.
So, well, I don't care. You're just responsible for everything. We're gonna be watching a video called The Killing Field. So we'll talk about that when we get there. And I will assign the Espionage Act as a reading. So I'll give you that the reading tomorrow, and the Espionage Act you already have in your packet. Sound good?
Yep.
And just remind me though, because I will forget.
I should be here Thursday now, so.
Wonderful. See ya.
All right, see you.